is Jessica Webster.
And this is Sam Pogue of the Fitness Break Room podcast. Sit back, take a well-deserved break, and learn about the journey that helps shape the most successful fitness professionals in the industry today.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fitness Break Room podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pogue, along with my lovely co-host, Jessica Webster.
Thank you.
And we're here in Phoenix, Arizona at Opex'S HQ with CEO Jim Crowell and CCP instructor, head coach, Michael Oban.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for having us.
Thanks for did I get all those titles right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yours are just so many letters. CEO is just so much easier.
Just simple.
So we're here and on a little Arizona tour, as you guys have probably seen, and I got to connect with Michael at the Central Virginia Sports Performance Conference, and we're going to call them dorm mates, not bunk mates, which is my first bed mates.
Gotta enjoy the weekend.
He's just a very gentle soul. And
Oh, man.
might as well just get it out there right now. Get everybody on the same page. And we got to
Such
connect.
soft skin.
Yeah, just a very beautiful man, right? I mean, that's true love right there when you can express beauty of a man. And we got to connect just talking and just about fitness and business and culture and thought there were a lot of really cool stories and through lines, not only between Fitness Break Room and our beliefs, but our organizations as well, and was really excited just to share some time with these two and learn more about Opex'S and where they got their start. So maybe you guys can take us down a journey and tell us about what Opex'S is and where it came from.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
No, go ahead, Jim. You're the one that's been building us up, brother.
So Opex'S was actually originally Optimum Performance Training. And many people know James Fitzgerald. He was the winner of the 2007 CrossFit Games. So Optimum Performance Training actually was born from James being a longtime trainer and coach in Canada. So he was up in Calgary for a number of years. He started at the YMCA, through a lot of business conversations, recognized that he wanted to be on his own, gets into his own facility, which was his basement at the time, and really started growing a following in his own basement, and then really got into CrossFit. And one thing led to another. He wins the CrossFit Games, gets thrust into that realm, but he's really always had a little bit different methodology than pure functional fitness or writing a workout on the board. And so he was always trying to learn and grow. And then in around 2010, there was a falling out with CrossFit, unfortunately. And he and his wife wanted to come to Arizona. Honestly, a big reason was the sun, no joke. And so they moved down here with their two then young daughters, and they started, it was still Optimum Performance Training at the time. And we got into sort of two different business lines at that point, which was coaching of coaches. Mm-hmm. And, if you know James, it is everything to honor the coach. And so we have a deep belief in that. Everybody here has a deep belief in that, because if the coach has longevity in a future, that means the clients are taken care of, that means the business can prosper, and so we really try to honor the coach. So fast forward a couple of years, I come in, Michael comes in, a lot of great coaches come in. James actually takes a step back from coaching clients remotely, and Mike Lee, Michael Bann, a bunch of other coaches kind of step into that and really start to run that, and then coaching education grows. A couple of years after that, we get into fitness facility licensing because we recognize that there wasn't a good platform for our coaches to have longevity. Mm-hmm. They just weren't succeeding long enough in that world. And so we brought out licensing, and we've been growing that for about the last year and a half, and that's what brought us into this facility. And through that time, we went from Optimum Performance Training to Opex'S. The brief story about that is we were trying to trademark Optimum Performance Training, did it in Canada, couldn't do it in the United States, so we had to rebrand. And so for the last 3 years, we've been Opex'S, and so things have been going really well, and can't complain, and it's been really fun to see the evolution of everything.
Yeah, OP, Optimum Performance, exercise.
Actually, no. It's
Damn it.
Yeah, I mean, myself included. When I first started to hear about the brand, the rebrand, I figured that same thing. It's a little bit different, but we'll go with that for right now because it does make a lot of sense.
It's a good story.
Yeah, right.
What is it really?
It's a combination of a number of things, but the branding manager actually took a number of different components and meshed them into Opex'S.
Okay.
So it does mean a lot, but in all reality, we were looking for that it word, and so it still signifies Optimum Performance Training. But as you would know, when we're going through a rebrand, it's always a different it just feels very different. So overnight, all of a sudden, people go, well, who are you guys? And we had been, because James was OPT in the CrossFit world for a number of years. So once OPT went away, we had a lot of work to do to really create this new brand. And so it took a little while before we really got some momentum behind it.
Interesting. And branding, as Jessica has talked a lot about, and we've talked about with other people, is so important to deliver the why behind your message. You can have the greatest service in the world, but if nobody knows about it or no one understands it, people aren't necessarily always going to find it, or at least at a rate that keeps you in business and you can continue to feed your family and eat food.
I got to give Michael a great compliment out of the gates. He is very good and very consistent with his brand of coaching. And that brand is very much about connecting at a deeper level of fitness. Now, he doesn't have to go tell people what this deeper level is in terms of his clients. They need to have results. They need to enjoy the process. But he goes into a deep area of fitness, and what he's built in terms of his own brand is very unique and very consistent. So now, after years of building that Instagram, social, or Facebook, etc., and through a lot of really good coaching and courses, people now have a very clear understanding of who he is. And in the fitness industry, unfortunately, there's just not enough differentiation at the coaching level. They get into, well, I'm a coach. Well, at this point, I don't care. What does it mean to be a coach? You've got to have not just a personality, you have to have a niche of who you really are, what your beliefs are, because in a segmented world of social media now, if you don't have a belief system, how are people going to get on board for what you really believe in? So it's been an interesting thing, and he does a really good job of it.
I love that you're saying that, because that was exactly our topic in the last Toolkit Summit that we were just on, was talking about how there will be a serious problem in the success of the fitness industry as a whole if everyone tries to do everything on their own and tries to Frankenstein their personal brand together just from awesome things that they see that are already being done. And one of the most important things in crafting your personal brand is really doing a lot of deep work as to finding out who you are. And I'm sure that your brand isn't built, I'm not sure, I'm guessing. But I'm assuming that your brand isn't focused around the aesthetic beauty of like, blue is my brand and like this is my font and my website was made with $1 million. Like it is Michael. It is the essence of your life's work, and it kind of transcends your job description or your vocation. Like your personal brand goes with you in between. If you're not working at all, it is you when you're out in public, which is why people who do their personal brand so well, like yourself, people can feel that it means something to you, and it's not just turned on when you walk into work. They see you at the grocery store and you're still you. It's because it comes from inside and it's not Frankenstein together, which I think is like so noble. It's hard. It's hard, It's hard to know who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I call it authentic coaching. So it's just, if you talk to me as a client or not a client, you're going to get the same experience. So for me, I guess where I kind of come from was I kind of saw a lot of stuff that was kind of wrong within the coaching industry in terms of just people didn't understand what they didn't understand, and they didn't have an awareness of their own biases. So I guess where I made my brand was trying to be aware of all of my potential biases without attaching to them or judging them.
Wonderful. One of the things that we love to talk about on this podcast are people's stories. And this is because of this attrition rate that we were talking about before we turned the camera on. A lot of people get into the fitness industry not incorrectly assuming, because a lot of people who have made it in the fitness industry make it almost like it was so easy to get here. All you need to do is just work super hard, And so we love to talk about people's stories. So I was wondering maybe if you guys could tell us a little bit about how you got into this industry to where you are now. I mean, you guys are Opex'S. I see this brand as like Apex, right? Like you guys are at the very pinnacle. You're a very intellectual brand. I was talking to a couple of your content curators and developers out here, and they're like translating some really intense, like intelligent stuff to the masses, but it still has the air of intellectualism to it. Anyway, like how did you guys as individuals get into this like apex of this fitness brand?
Yeah, I think I started in high school, actually. I can remember about 5-6 months ago, earlier in the year, I got a Facebook message from a guy named Jason Brierly. Completely forgot he existed, but he was a freshman. I was a senior. I was in the weight room helping out freshmen. And years and years later, he was like, hey, man, I was just going to the gym, and I randomly thought of you because you helped me out with bench pressing years ago. So I looked you up. I was like, wow, I actually had a vested interest in helping people since I
Great
was in high
set.
school.
Right?
So it was awkward for me. So I think you could say I officially started when I was in high school. But then I started, when I was 8 years old, I read my first medical journal. Didn't understand a single thing I read. But I remember telling my dad that I was like, I want a medical journal. So he actually went and bought me the American Heart Association, the monthly edition or whatever it was. And I remember reading it being like, these are a lot of big words. I can pronounce them almost, don't know what any of it means. But since I started undergrad, I studied exercise science. The continual confusion of it, I think, is what started to drive me.
What do you mean the continual confusion?
So I originally thought things were about movement, like because I was very fascinated with FMS, SFMA, PRI, DNS, and I went through all of their coursework. And then having studied kinesiology and exercise science, I actually thought like people get pain because of movement. And I hurt my back years ago, so I went through the whole, couldn't move, my back was injured. Obviously, it was because I lifted something wrong, so I thought. And as I kept learning more and more, I started to realize that pain is not actually related. Well, it's related, it's correlated, but it's not always just movement. So exercise is not the answer, it's an answer. And as I kept investigating more and more, through undergrad, and I'm finishing up a graduate degree right now, I started to realize that for me, getting people to perform better at their highest level, whatever the level they want to perform at, was honestly no different than getting people out of pain. I saw it as one is the same. The principles transcended both paradigms. And I think that's kind of where I started to also build myself up within Opex's, was that I just started to see a lot of people get hurt with too high intense fitness, being on programs or following programs that aren't written for them properly.
Not at Opex's.
Not at Opex's. Yeah, of course. No, people
Just
would-
make sure that gets jabbed in there.
And over the years, I guess I despised academia when I finished my undergrad. And then I told myself I would never go to school again. 6 months later, I started grad school. And then halfway through grad school, I was just hating it. And I was like, I'll never do another program after this. And then I kept learning more, and I was like, wow, there's a lot actually that there needs to change in terms of academia. And so I'm actually looking at applying to med school in a year.
Yeah, because why not?
Yeah, well, it seems like a good idea.
He loves school. That's why.
Yeah.
I hate school. Actually, I just
Are you
talked-
just naturally good at it? Yeah, you are. It's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I
Don't be modest. Just say I'm super fucking smart.
He wants to.
Michael is very, very.
yeah. So I guess I see a lot that could be fixed. I had this conversation with a professor on Sunday. He sent me a message and he was like, "You say a lot of things, but you don't have a lot of evidence behind it." And I realized that just because I stated a fact without a citation to my fact doesn't mean that it's not true. And I see that kind of error within this current fitness movement of, it's got to be evidence-based fitness. And so then last night I actually wrote a 3-page paper for him on why evidence is great, and I see a huge need for it. But the first pilot didn't have a license. And so innovators don't rely on somebody else to prove a point before they take a leap of faith. And I think that's kind of where my journey is going now, and where it has been all along without realizing it. Was I kept seeing people, hey, you're supposed to get hurt, you have bad form. Hey, you're supposed to do this. All the evidence says this. But then I'm looking around and I'm watching CrossFit and other boot camp style fitness, modalities, and no one's getting hurt. But they're supposed to. So I kept looking deeper, and now I'm looking at it from more like we talked off camera about Ben House. And I see a lot of it from his lens as well. And so I've had some conversations with him, albeit small ones, but it just makes more sense that it's not so simple. And the more and more complicated it gets, the more confused I get, the more driven I get to want to figure it out. But my research, I don't really want to be in a lab as a PhD. I want to be a clinician, essentially, in the trenches, continually trying to evolve my thoughts. But like as we said earlier, I'm really well known for movement, but I look at like things like a dead bug, and there's 10,000 reasons why you can give a dead bug, but at the end of the day, it's still just a dead bug. That's where I see, Opex's, within myself at least, with the seminars and CCP and trying to, elevate that I guess you can call it I guess a thought process would be the best way to think about it. Just trying to, transcend and no longer over time, it's hard to kind of word it, I guess. I would say kind of what James Fitzgerald did, no longer coaching clients, in 10, 15 years, but really trying to, up the field.
Real quick, what is CCP? We've mentioned it a few times acronym-wise.
Yeah, it's our coaching certificate program. Perfect. So it takes about a year to go through. And we cover everything from learning how to assess movement to learning how to actually work with clients on nutrition, and then also learning about business and program design. So it takes about a year to go through, and you go on cohort calls with us. You come out. We actually have an immersion next week, right?
Next week.
Yeah, next week.
Very
yeah.
Cool.
And they come out for 2 days, and they basically hang out with the CCP instructors and coaches, and we just immerse them in everything that we do at Opex'S.
I think that's so great. I think the market really is calling for a transition because, as we were talking earlier, the barriers to entry to get into this industry are so easy, yet no one's really taken the time to focus on the mindset or the coaching of coaches. And I think that's such a great opportunity. There's so many different fitness programs out there, so many styles, and we're not here to argue over which one's better or the other, but the fact that someone's going to take an amalgamation of all these theories and let's just make that coach a better delivery or someone that understands the process of doing this better. And the fitness industry, 10 years ago when I got into it, and when most of us probably got into it, wasn't what it is today. And now the seminar space alone is huge. The summit space is growing like crazy. Gyms are growing like crazy. No longer can you just be the only guy in the block and just get by because you have people within you. It's not like the old school, you're walking distance from my house. It's like, I might drive out of the way just because I want to come here or because of my relationship with Michael, that it's that important to me. I'm not saying every single person is going to do it, but I think there's a really unique opportunity here for you guys to understand not only just fitness and programming, and you can look at all day, like Michael was saying about SFMA, FMS, but until you understand the why you're delivering it and then how to deliver it so that way the client, you get buy-in and trust, and so that way they're following it, it doesn't really matter. You can have all that knowledge in the world, and being able to bridge the gap between medical journals to delivering it to Grandma Betty is huge, because there's a journal in the Journal of Physical Therapy that states how form doesn't matter, and that is not indicative of potential injuries. Yet we sit and talk about neutral spine and faulting into extension or flexion or anterior pelvic tilt all the time, right? Yet this journal, because you can prove anything in a journal, right? But then and most scholarly articles, I'm not a scholar like you are. Thank God for the rest of the world, I'm not a scholar, because it wouldn't go well. But a lot of it's just like, let's push you just to reinforce what's already been stated, right? When you do your master's thesis, it's not a whole lot of what's new, and some programs might push for that, but a lot of programs are reinforce that this squats are good for you by going a different direction. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I would say every time I hear or read an article or talk to clinicians that say neutral spine. Actually, I was at a coffee shop earlier today, and 2 people were talking about how they have to work on their neutral spine, and I was like, that's a weird coffee shop conversation. And I'm sitting there without my headphones on, so I'm distracted listening to them, and I'm like, how wrong are you people to not even recognize what neutral is? Because I don't think anyone knows what neutral is. What is neutral for what? And I think what we do really well at Opex'S is that we try to teach coaches how to understand the function of whomever you're working with. So when I coach coaches and I'm telling them, hey, listen, it's okay to squat like this, and I completely bottom out an air squat, my low back is rounded, I got the butt wink. There's nothing wrong with that in that moment in time, because I'm just roasting some s'mores at a campfire.
Yep.
You want to put 500 pounds on my back, maybe that's not the best idea. So there was this massive amount of dogma, and I guess what I would say is dogma at the end of the day is the death of mastery. And what we try to teach is mastery of coaching. And, there's this whole, you can't flex your spine, it's going to break. Well, is that based on research of live living tissue spines, or is it based on a pig spine that's dead that actually can't remodel and regrow itself or rebuild?
That doesn't do spinal flexion at all because it's ground-based.
Well, yeah. But even then, how many cycles does it take? It's I got to tie my shoes, so I'm not going to set my back to tie my shoes.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself, Michael.
You don't get posture like this by not setting your spine.
Look
to
at
tie your
this.
shoes. This is, context is king.
Yeah.
Take your s'mores elsewhere.
Don't knock the s'mores, man. Marshmallows are the best. Yeah, where were we at besides
Your
started
story in terms of how you got into this.
Yeah,
Journals and
yeah. So I just started thinking in terms of where people's biases are. It just that's like something that really really irritates me. Like not to a belligerent kind of perspective, but just like a why don't people get it? And there's so much more that goes into pain, and that's really where I started looking at it from like a high end performance. Having worked with various tactical athletes all over the world, is that they're known for getting hurt a lot. And I started seeing that as I made them not have as much pain, as I helped them get out of pain, their job performance got better and their fitness performance got better. But it wasn't because I was actually attacking these things.
Yeah.
I was actually attacking what was causing their pain, which is like, oh, wow, like maybe you actually have some issues with detoxification or whatever because you touched 5,000 pieces of lead a day. Stuff like that. And so I guess you won't see that in the literature because you can't study that.
Yep.
It can only be studied here in this world, or like in Ben House's world, where you're actually like, hey, yeah, this is the exact protocol I gave them. They got better, but this person over here, complete different environment, and it can't be studied.
It's like the research on pregnancy. Like no one wants to research, like what woman's going to sign up who's pregnant? Like, okay, we're going to find out how much you can do before you have a miscarriage or something, right? Because who's going to be the clinician that does that because you're a douche? Or B, what woman is going to do that, right? Like I talked to Lisa McDonald, who runs the women's seminar from Jim Jones, and she's like, there's not a ton of information out there because who's going to do it?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, yeah.
Well, it was the same argument I just had actually with the professor. I was like, listen, in the military, there's this thing called quick clot, and it saves lives. But I don't think there was a clinical trial where anyone severed a femoral artery of a living human and then applied quick clot to see if it would work. But they still use it. So this whole notion of evidence-based fitness is like, well, show me the data. And it's like, well, all right, but I had a conversation with another professor, and I straight up asked her, hey, how many people have you worked with? She's like, oh, I just finished grad school and I started teaching. So you've never written a program for a single athlete, yet you're telling me that I'm wrong. And it's not like this, like I'm higher and more mightier than you because I have a PhD, or I'm a coach and I actually have worked in the trenches. It's just this, people aren't really communicating. And I think that's probably where the field needs to get fixed the most, is that the trenches is where people start recognizing stuff.
Yeah.
So when I was at the university and I used to teach anatomy and physiology, I would teach my students like, hey, causal question. You have an observation and then you're like, oh, why does that work? How does that work? What's actually happening? How is that happening? And then you can go and study it. It's not the other way around. You don't just not see things and then decide to study it. And the trenches is where we begin to have observations. And then down the road, some researchers like, why is that working? And last quarter, I had the same conversation with a different professor. He actually published research on daily undilated periodization, high-low method, conjugate method. Published it in 2002, and his argument was, well, we have to have data to support what we're doing. And I was like, are you telling me Louis Simmons wasn't doing anything successful before you published your data in 2002? Was Poliquin and all the people in the Eastern Bloc, Soviet states during the Cold War, they were just sitting there confused until you published in 2002?
Right.
And I didn't get a good grade on that paper.
What's funny is Michael's not super confrontational. Like he's a very like mellow individual. Like he's not. But
yeah, I'm not like screaming at my my instructors or my professors. It's just I like to ask challenging questions to try and change people's belief structures, and
I can see that.
I definitely didn't get a good grade on that paper. But he actually appreciated it. He was like, that's a good point, but you still need evidence for this course. And I was like, face meet palm.
That's when you take him the article, the Time Magazine article, that A students will work for B students, right? A students are really good at following directions and just taking tasks and doing them. B students, like, I get it. I just don't want to play by your rules because I don't have to. And I still get a good enough grade that I don't really care.
Didn't Bill Gates drop out of college or something like that? Or somebody like that?
Steve Jobs left Reed College.
Yeah.
So
Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
So, and then take us through, like, so you went to school, you're teaching, and then how long were you just in the educational platform, or when did you get into the industry, right? And just for you guys who don't know, industry is like private setting, like Opex'S, On It, CrossFit, versus academic setting would be like a strength conditioning for like a college or a pro team.
I think I did it all at the same time, actually. So I started studying exercise science, and I think it was like the same week school started. I joined a gym because I had to move to Flagstaff, and one of the owners of the gym was like, hey, why don't you work for me? Within the first week of being there, because I did a boot camp class. And It was actually like the quickest boot camp class ever. It was 10 sets, 40-second sprint, 20-second rest on the treadmill. Right. So what is that? A minute? It was a 10-minute boot camp class. I was dying. And then he basically was like, you want to work for me? I was like, because I'm dying? Okay.
I've got what it takes to run a 10-minute class.
Yeah. That's right.
I see something in you.
You sold like you were getting your ass kicked really well.
That's right.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so I started studying exercise science, and then I started obviously working for him. And I wasn't really allowed to do much for my first year. It was more like an internship. Like I cleaned a lot of toilets. The traditional welcome to the industry. You are now going to be kind of a slave for a year.
Sounds like a shitty job.
It was a great job. Look, I get it.
Thank you. I'm here all week.
Took me a second, but yeah. So I did that for a couple of years. It was a private facility. It was kind of a mix. It was a CrossFit gym. It was a Globo gym and a physical therapy clinic. And I got introduced to so many different things that I never thought of, which was my first introduction to being like, hey, guess what? You're biased. And like one of my bosses was Carl DeRosa, who wrote kind of the textbook on spinal rehab. So like there's Stu McGill, and then Carl DeRosa is kind of the Stu McGill of rehab world, like physical therapy. And I got to learn, a decent amount through challenging perspectives. So I ended up picking up his book and reading it. And I moved to ASU to study kinesiology. Got to pay the bills. So I worked for Cactus CrossFit. And I was lucky enough to kind of be given free reign to do what I want there. And so for about 3.5, maybe 4 years, I did about 200 to 250 assessments a month on people. And I wrote their programs based on the assessments, basically FMSs. So I did that for a number of years. And then I also worked for Scottsdale Healthcare Fitness. So it was a fitness center, dubbed CrossFit gym, but owned by Scottsdale Healthcare, the hospital. And so I did that for a number of years. And then I think it was about a year, actually about 2 years I did that. Yeah, so anyway, I ended up going through CCP and meeting James.
Okay.
And I was like, man, this guy's smart. I'm going to pay for his time and have him mentor me. But he's not cheap at the time. It was like $3.95 to talk to for an hour, something absurd, like something crazy. And I was like, all right, I'm going to pay for 2 hours because that's all I can afford. So
Just pretty good considering most trainers don't have that. So that's good on you early into your career that you had that foresight.
Yeah, well, after my second
Still hear
hour,
the stress behind that right now.
it was so expensive at the time. I paid for basically 2 hours of his time. The first hour, I had a lot of questions, and I was like, all right, I'm going to come back in 2 days when I can actually think about more questions. Came back the second day after the hour was up. I'm driving home, and I remember thinking, like, how cool it would be to work there. I get this, if you've ever like read an email from James, he doesn't really use a lot of capitalization. Like he doesn't use punctuation. It's just like lowercase I and THX for thanks. I got this maybe 5-word email. Do you want to work for me? And I was like, and I wrote this like 4-paragraph.
Oh, manifested.
Yeah. I wrote this 4-paragraph response back, like, oh, I'm so humbled and honored. And he was like, cool, come up today and chat. I was like, what? I just wasn't used to James's style. And then I came up and he was like, I need somebody to be kind of my head coach and be my guy on site. You want it? And I was like, yeah, when do you need me? And he's like, tomorrow. I was like, oh, all right, I'll give my notice to Cactus CrossFit. And then I was up here.
I think it's super important to note that to put yourself out there, and we've talked about networking a number of times on the show, that you're willing to invest your $700 to get 2 hours of this guy's time, not knowing anything else coming in. And all I'm saying is you're an expert that I respect your work after doing this course, and I want to learn a little bit more where I get some one-on-one time with you. I think a lot of fresh college grads or a lot of, I'm going to say kids, a lot of individuals these days just expect it to be handed to them, yet without any investment. Right, and he didn't have to. I'm sure that just spoke volumes for him. Like this dude out of nowhere just paid for the course, then paid to have my time, and challenged so many great questions that like if he's willing to do that, what's he willing to do if I'm paying him, right? And I think that speaks so much, and a lot of that story is not told enough for a lot of people getting into this industry. That some little bit of sacrifice, a little bit of investment, cleaning some shitters, like, taught you and put you in the scenario, a little bit of humble pie, some servitude. Yeah. And now look where you're at. You're in this beautiful facility with an amazing organization that you get to proliferate a message that's super important to your heart to the world and have a platform to do it from.
Yeah, I think, what's the word, philanthropy? Like Basically, I mean, everything I did for those assessments and all that. That was all free. Like I just volunteered for that. And I think for my first 6-7 years of actually coaching, I didn't really financially do well. But I think that's something that a lot of coaches kind of miss the boat on, is that they think they're going to graduate and have this great job, or they're going to work with pro athletes right away, and then they hit the real world and they're like, whoa, like I'm not working with athletes, I'm working with knee pain and back pain.
Weird, David Johnson from the Cardinals just didn't walk up to me in my CrossFit gym and like, dude, I need a trainer. That's odd.
And pay the entire monthly bill.
Yes. Without question. Yeah,
Right.
sure. Here's my card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where, most coaches probably have a fantasy around that. And that's
Yeah.
why I think where the attrition also comes from. Because I hear it all the time, like, oh yeah, I'm a coach, but I also have a real job. It's like, whoa, well, hold on a second. Like coaching is a real job. It's
Yeah.
a craft. It is a science. We do have to use science, but you have to know how to apply the science. And that takes art. And that takes time in the trenches, thousands upon thousands of hours of practice. And more importantly, thousands of mistakes. And I think the mistakes are what kind of discourage a lot of coaches. And that's probably where like such high attrition rates come from. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb. He just invented a million ways not to make a light bulb. He was left with one answer. And I think coaches, they get a couple things wrong and they're like, screw it, we don't need light bulbs. And then they move on. And that's kind of heartbreaking because, as Jim said earlier, we really want to honor the coach, because the coach at the end of the day is the link between the business and the client. And no business can really win if the employees hate their job, if there's a high turnover. That's why Apple, I love going into Apple, because every time I go in there, they're always super awesome to me, but they take care of their employees. So it kind of makes sense. They're happy to be there to be working. I'm happy to not be treated like Best Buy treats me. And obviously Apple wins because they get my money. And
A lot of it.
A lot of it.
yes, it's true.
What's up, everybody? Jessica here. I just wanted to pop by to give you a friendly reminder to enter into our Fitness Industry Night giveaway, which we do every month. For this month, we're in February 2018. It's sponsored by our friends at Onnit. Thanks, Onnit. They're giving one of you a pair of those awesome Captain America Shield barbell plates. These are those really nice urethane bumper plates, so they're like those solid discs, not the crumb rubber ones. They're really low bounce, which is a great quality for plates, especially for those of you who use them for WODs. They don't go, flying around, bloodying your shins or like breaking mirrors. To enter to win, go to our website, fitnessbreakroom.com, and just leave your name and email on the entry form. And basically, we'll let you know if you won or not at the end of the month. For extra entries to win, you can email me a screenshot of your review you left us on iTunes. If you decided to do that, that's awesome. Thank you very much. You can share the contest on Facebook, on Twitter. You can email it to a friend. We're just trying to make it as easy as possible to share the love of the podcast and for you to win free stuff. So wins for everyone. Also on our website, you can find a video version of all of our VIP interviews like the one you were listening to before I interrupted, and a bunch of other resources we've come across that have made a huge impact on our careers and people we've known in the industry. So definitely go check that out. We keep the website pretty up to date, so every time you go, you should find something new. Okay, that's it for me. Enjoy the rest of the show, and thanks so much in advance for your reviews and your support.
That's awesome, man. I really love that story. And going beyond that, you were just an academic, because it's easy to, not easy, I don't say that easy. It's easy to be an academic in terms of, I can go crush school and I can go crush articles and I can be really smart and muscle test and go into chemistry labs. But then to have the foresight and the attitude of sacrifice to go in and create this opportunity for yourself, because you created a job for yourself out of nowhere, right? Because you're like, oh, this is something that could happen. I'm willing to go do that, like take this step, this leap of faith, without even asking for anything, right? Versus if you would have gone into James's job or James's that interview or hour of time he bought, and all you were doing was pitching him and why he should hire you, it's probably like, who the fuck is this guy? That's another one. Versus like, okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And he's going, who is this guy? Why is he asking me such amazing questions? And I don't know, right? I don't know the conversation. I wasn't there, but I imagine that's probably how it went, right? You trying to understand what his mindset was and where he was going with things.
Yeah, it was actually more just me talking at him, trying to explain what I think is true. And then at the very end of it, he was just like, yeah, sounds about right. And I was like, that was expensive for that. So I was like, well, I got to get something out of it. So I was like, what book should I read? And he was like, nah, I don't read any new books. I was like,
Books
what?
are for nerds.
Well, no, he actually was like, don't read any new books. He was like, read what you've already read and highlight what you're already doing and stop trying to learn new things.
Wow,
And,
that's a great nugget.
Yeah, and looking back on that, that just makes sense because you can't reinvent the wheel. You can only put new, cool, shiny spinners on it, but it's still a wheel. So I read all of Mike Boyle's work, and then I read Joel Jameson, and I read all this stuff, and I was like, wait, they're all saying the same stuff. They're all saying the same exact thing. You know what they're saying? They're saying don't overstress the nervous system and make people aerobic. But they all have a different way of saying it because they have to make themselves sound unique.
Totally.
So, but at the time, my head was exploding because I was like, James, you gave me like 3 words out of that hour. And you were like, sounds about right. All right.
That's my end goal. I want to charge $400 for 3 words.
Yeah.
I'd be crushing it in life because I
$100
talk a
per
lot.
word.
Yeah, that sounds like a great model. Let's start that right now.
Isn't that Tony Robbins? Yeah. Pretty much?
Yeah.
Could be.
In a large setting.
Oh, yeah.
And then walk over coals
Right. Yeah, exactly.
as your journey.
That'll
So,
teach him.
That's an awesome story, man. Thank you very much for sharing that, and really appreciate you taking down. And what a great nugget to be able to stop reading new information and go back through what you've read and find out what you're doing already. What a great way to narrow your scope and really define and reinforce the values and be better at what you're already doing. Right. So that's awesome.
That being said, is there anything that you've read that you think would be helpful for people to read? Let's say they haven't read much. They can't just stop reading what they haven't read.
Yeah. 2 books that I can think of immediately, and they have nothing to do with coaching, but they have everything to do with coaching. So first I'll say every book actually has everything to do with coaching, because coaching isn't just program design. Coaching is learning how to build relationships and learning how to help people live a life that they find fulfilling. When you can line up a client or anyone's values with their actions, and it's not you forcing it, but it's you creating awareness. So like everyone has a story back here behind their head. If you can see that story and pull it out and let the client see it, and they can go, wow, that's totally me. They can begin to fix themselves, fixing being, an arbitrary word. But the 2 books I think that were most influential in the beginning part of my career, The Way of the Superior Man by David Dieta, great book, brilliant book. And then if you're a male coach, or if you're a man, you
No,
read
it's
that
good for
book
women
first.
too. I've read it a couple times. I love it.
No, it's a great book, but I would say for men, read that book first and then read his other book, It's a Guy Thing. And his other book, It's a Guy Thing, is the same exact book pretty much, but it's written from a feminine lens or a feminine perspective. And if you're a woman, I generally, like my female coaches that I mentor, I tell them, hey, read It's a Guy Thing. When you're done, read Way of the Superior Man. And so you swap so you can see both lenses. And once I read that, I started to recognize what leadership can be like. I started to be like, wow, all right, so as a leader, this person needs to talk like this, and this person needs to talk like this, and they need to be handled like this. And you start to realize everyone needs an individualized approach. But those 2 books are probably the most influential of my career. I've read.
Never would have guessed that. Those are good ones.
Yeah. No, I've read countless biochem, and I'm finishing up a book on the science of telomerase and telomeres. And
Of course you are.
Yeah, I read all that
I
stuff.
read those too.
Yeah, well,
When I was 6, idiot. Wait, welcome to the real world.
That was Dr. Seuss at 6. But no, so I mean, I was on this kick for a long time, and then I had to start writing a lot of papers, but I was reading 1 book a week. And of all the books I've read, those 2 books are still the best books I've ever read for coaching.
Awesome.
That and The Values Factor.
Those will all be in the show notes for you guys if you didn't catch all that quickly. So that's awesome. Give us your rundown. Tell us your story.
I am very different than Michael, I think.
I love
in
it.
That I am much more, let's call it day to day. So everything ultimately pulls me back to business, which is very different than him as a coach. And I think that, I'll give you a quick rundown history of where I came from, but
Yeah.
I think it's clear to say that everything will ultimately lead me back to figuring organizations and systems and processes out. So I started actually when I was about 13 or 14, fascinated by the stock market. I mean, fascinated. It wasn't all about money. It was how everything connected and everything led to upward, downward movement. And if I'm being very honest, I liked charts. I'm very visual, and seeing chart movement like that was very fascinating to me. So I got deep into stocks when I was 13, 14 years old.
You guys were early fucking bloomers.
Yeah, so
8 years old, reading journals, 13, like studying the stock market. And I'm like, I'm still crashing my BMX bike, like seeing how high I can stack 2x4s before I eat shit.
Right.
Which
don't get me wrong. I mean, there was plenty of those stages.
okay, good. So that makes me feel better about myself. I was like, damn, God, I'm over here with a bunch of just overachiever kids.
So I go through high school. I think I was a 5-sport athlete, so very focused on any sport that I was playing. And then I got into tennis, but what was fascinating is I really got into tennis because the coaching that I found was fantastic. And so it was, I wouldn't even say a relationship, it was the learning of the sport that fascinated me. And not until at least a decade later did I really recognize it wasn't the sport, it was the progress within the sport that really got me attached to it. That is a key theme that I still feel to this day. And so when I went to Penn State, and I played tennis at Penn State, so I was good enough to play at that level, but certainly not, the best in the country. But to your point, I was actually in a fraternity and loved it.
Okay, good.
I had a great time.
I can like you again now.
Yeah, right. So, but even in the frat, one of the things that I had in mind is I go, how do we grow this thing? Because I went into it and maybe we had 30 members, and by the time I left, we had 115. And so the fascination around growing an organization was very real for me back then. But I stayed on the business path, and when I was in the investment association and all this these different things, trading. It's just I had to be in Wall Street.
Yeah.
It just had to be in Wall Street. I knew that was the answer. So I graduated and I went to work for a hedge fund, and I started trading commodities at 22 or 23 or something like that. And talk about getting trial by fire, right? Like you either get thrown in or you never get to take a bite, right?
Yeah.
Because you're either trading or you're not.
Yeah.
And so, I have all these statements now that just are so real to me that I learned in that industry, and I say them to these guys today. It's like when the economy drops, like we're going to be buying when there's blood in the street.
Yep.
It's like those statements to me are what shape the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had 5 good years there, but what I really recognized was I wanted to be in an industry that I felt like had longevity to my body, my mind, my soul, and so it was really a 180-degree change in the industry. And I went and I quit the hedge fund, and opened one CrossFit with a buddy of mine up in Pittsburgh, and we got going. And I loved coaching, and I was the head coach, and I did that, and I just loved the relationship side of it. But I also loved to build the businesses, and so in a year or 2 years, we built that one up big. We opened a second one. We built that one up big. And then I find Opex'S, so I start learning from Opex'S. And to his point, it's not program design. It's not assessment. It's not nutrition. It's all of it. It's consultation. It's human behavior. It's relationships. It's business. And so I was really fascinated by James, by Opex'S, by the instructors that I saw, and I saw opportunity. So just like CrossFit, right? In 2010, when I opened the gyms, it was opportunistic. No barrier, low price point, get in, bring clients in, crush. And so I saw Opex'S as an opportunity for myself and for what I thought the organization could be. So I came in here actually as a coach. And so people don't really know that at this point because I don't coach anymore.
Right.
But I came in here as a coach, and to go back to the sports thing, I was also a CrossFit athlete at that point, and I ended up competing with the team at the games in 2015. And the moment that the games were over, I was completely over it. Like I had no interest anymore because I had hit the goal, I had learned what I needed to learn, and it was on to the next thing. And so just like tennis, just like the hedge fund, just like whatever, I'm on to the next thing because I love the idea of progress and learning and growing. And so I kind of just got into, Michael, you can remember this, but when I showed up, I was looking for things to do. I was looking for things to fix. Because that's just the way that I am, right? So I'm trying to dig into all this shit. James was like, what are you even doing? So I'm just trying to fix this stuff. And within a couple of months, I knew it was very, very clear that my place here was not as a coach. Perhaps I would get to coach people, but I was not a coach like he's a coach. Right? That's not me.
Right.
And so I got into the business side and kind of just worked my way around a number of different areas and loved it. And he can tell you, I love the business of fitness. And so through a lot of growth there and a lot of opportunities, we built something, or I guess we continued to build something that was already there. And through that trial and tribulation, became the CEO here and just absolutely love it. So I've really enjoyed that time here. And now my wife is actually She's an attorney. She's going back to school. I'm finishing up an MBA right now. So it's like we're constantly in the same learning environment in terms of growth, growth, growth. And we're sort of saying, okay, well, this is great. Where do we actually continue that growth? And I see this being an environment where we can grow this thing forever.
Yeah.
So to his point and to your point, the fitness industry needs more organizations that actually want their people to succeed. And so I don't see our CCP program ever going away from actual touch points. I see us having courses that are $29 and $99 because it's helpful. But that's not going to change somebody's life. So you've got to actually take the time to spend energy with people so that they can actually go on a long-term journey. So for me, that's kind of how I got into it, and I'm fascinated by it, and the people just call me the business guy.
I love it. And for a long time, you could open up a gym and it was like, I just get to be the only CrossFit on the box and we're the sexy and people are following it. And that's any gym. It could be a Barry's, it could be a Zumba, it could be whatever it is. But now, in Arizona alone, it's a hotbed of performance and coaching facilities, right? Florida's a hotbed. Austin's a hotbed. In New York, in LA, gosh, geez, it's like everything pops up right there. And it's like what really separates is the quality and the delivery.
Oh, yeah.
And how you can help others succeed, because it doesn't behoove Opex's at all if you have a bunch of people going through the CCP course and then they're running shitty gyms.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's like, please don't tell that you went to our course.
Yeah,
right?
I could go so dark in this category. I really could. I mean, I talk about this with our gyms all the time. And you look at the industry, and there's big gyms, and then there's micro gyms. That's ultimately what the choices are right now. It's not like there's 50 different versions. There's big and there's small. Big charges $20 a month. Small charges a myriad of different numbers. But the difference is that big knows who they are and small as a whole do not.
Yep.
And so you've got these small gyms that are now trying to do the hot towel thing and trying to do all this, but they can't coach their people. So ultimately what they're doing is they're making the line closer and closer and closer and closer to the big gym without all of the amenities that the big gym has. And they're ultimately commoditizing the service of coaching.
Yeah.
So how in the world are you supposed to charge, what you're worth at $300, $400 a month when you're offering something in a shittier gym, doing the same thing that these big gyms offer? No chance of success with that in the long run. You might do okay if you catch a trend, maybe.
For a little bit, you're still a splash in the pan.
But think about it, right? The economy has been on fire since 2009, on fire, and these gyms are still going out. What happens when the economy turns? They're all going to get crushed. Not all. Many of them are going to get crushed. It's because, to your guys' point, they don't have a unique story. They don't have meaning. They don't have emotional connection. They don't have knowledge and the ability to deliver that knowledge. So at the end of the day, fitness is about relationships and results. If you don't deliver those, you have no value. That's just what there is. In the short run, sizzle sells. In the long run, it does not. So if you can't get results, I don't care how much sizzle you have, you'll have new clients because you have sizzle. But the cost per click and the cost per acquisition is going to go higher and higher and higher because you have no retention, which costs you a bunch, and you also have no natural or organic acquisition. If you don't have that, it's so expensive to bring clients in that there's no chance you'll succeed, and these gyms aren't actually marketing anyways. So, it's like we've got to have that conversation. I mean, we could go forever on this.
It's
I know
my favorite.
we could. But these gyms have to recognize that they're not special.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they do that, they'll realize it's like, okay, that's broken. I need to fix that now or I can't get clients in. Or if I have bad retention, it's only a matter of time before they go out. So they've got to fix the big important parts. So we're lucky enough at this point that we can hire the Michaels of the world. But in the beginning, we had to keep talent as close as possible, a.k.a. how James recruited him. I was basically the same way. I came to Opex's. I got coached by James as a CrossFit athlete. What happens when I start to sell my gyms? There's the email from Mike Lee and James Fitzgerald. Hey, what are you doing next? Right? So you keep your talent close because you never know when there might be an opportunity to snag somebody like Mike. So it's these gyms have to put systems around what they're doing. They have to. And I know I'm a systems guy, so I'm biased, but it's not going to last. And then, unfortunately for the coach, it's definitely not going to last. You make $10 an hour. Let's even call it $20 an hour. for 20 classes a week, do the math. That might be okay for a year or two, maybe, but it's not good for 5, and it's not good for family, and it's not good for a career.
Yeah. Our buddy Angelo Cisco, we did a podcast with him back when I was in Chicago, and he runs CrossFit O'Hare. And, he used to be one of the coaches for Barbell Ethos.
Oh, sure.
He actually shut the doors to his gym so he could build better services inside to his members. Like, what a cool opportunity. He's like, yeah, I want to play around with the sound system to build an integrative sound approach into the classes. And like, I don't want you getting ready to do max effort cleans and,
Miley Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus comes on.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe that's when I want 9 Inch Nails
Or maybe
to come
you
on.
do.
Or maybe,
I don't know.
I mean, I might. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I ain't scared about it. But I'm like, what a cool opportunity. But, he made the comment. He's like, you can only live on passion for 2 years.
Yeah.
After that, it's time to pay the piper or you got to get the F out.
Yeah, I mean, he and I know one thing we have in common. We spent thousands of hours on the floor. I mean, when I opened my gyms, I was the only coach. And I opened class times whenever somebody wanted them, whenever it was. So at one point, I would do minimum 8 classes a day plus 4 hours of private training for a long time.
Yeah.
But I learned what worked, and I learned where my time needed to be more valuable, and I learned where I wasn't actually getting successful results for people. And then that, for me, translated into how I would build the business. That, for him, translates into how he's going to coach his clients. End of the day, we're both running businesses, right? He's running his business as a coach. We're running Opex'S as a business. But if the coaches don't think about it in that way, they're not going to think about retention as an important number.
Yeah.
They're not going to think about having a conversation with you guys to acquire new clients. And if they don't do that, that makes it harder and harder for the gym. But that's why the industry is maturing. It's maturing because they're spitting people out right now. So I don't think it's actually going to get more, let's call it linear. I don't think there's going to be more models. I just think that more people are going to go to big and more people are going to go to small, the best ones. But if you can't actually prove that you're better, you aren't. And that's just killing fitness gyms right now. They can't point to where they're actually better, and so they can't provide value, and willingness to pay goes to 0 for clients.
Do you coach gyms?
Yes.
So what are you finding what is their big action item, the most common thing that you ask them to do to improve the state of their business?
So small fitness gyms, in my opinion, are only 2 things: retention and acquisition. Now, within that, obviously, there's a myriad of different things that they can do. But if you can't retain, you die. And if you can't acquire, you die. So they have to have more conversations in person to build awareness around what they believe, who they are, what their story is in that little town or city. Digital is wonderful, but that to me is a supplement for most small gyms. You have to have it, but what brings the clients in the fastest is sitting down and actually speaking to somebody or putting yourself into a coaching situation. So a lot of our gyms are actually putting themselves into a Lululemon, a Whole Foods, and using either technology or an actual conversation to start to coach somebody. Because for our gyms, we're all individual design. So we actually have to teach people what we do. It's a new concept. People don't get it. It's not personal training. So they're like, well, you coach me, but we're in a group environment? So they just don't get it. But what they understand is you are supporting me, and I think I could build a relationship with you. And until a coach can build that in person, they will not build it digitally. So it's like, this better than almost anybody. Digital is about exclaiming your story. But if you don't know what your story is, or if you can't exclaim it in person, good luck trying to capture somebody's eyes digitally.
Run just a tangent. I'm sorry to not cut that point off, but run us through a little bit of what your mindset of coaching is. As you talked about, it's like a semi-private model where you're providing individual coaching in that type of model, right? And just as you guys have watched the fitness trend, it started out where 24-hour fitness, Gold's Gym, Bally's were the model. Then the CrossFit boxes started coming around. The small 150-member, 200-member box system, semi-private group classes came around. Now we're starting to see the wave of group HIIT training, Barry's Boot Camp, Orange Theory, Rumble Boxing, Peloton, things like that. And these guys have this way of presenting high-end coaching in a scalable system where it's hard to, we all coached in the one-on-one segment where you're crushing 14, 15 hours a day, and you do that day in, day out, which is fine. And if you can do it, great. But at some point, you're like, okay, I can't keep doing this
tough.
forever. And that's where I think the real value that you guys are bringing this, not only the mindset of coaching, but how to do it to the masses. And so that way you can take cool trips and go on vacation, because that's something that most trainers don't have the luxury of doing. What do you mean someone else runs the gym and coaches classes and I get to take a break? Like, gosh, God forbid you go to dinner with someone,
Yep.
right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll hit it from the business end, and then you can hit it from the coaching end. The business is coach to client. So at the core of it, it's a coach coaching a client. That is done through consultations on a monthly basis. Think of sitting in a room one-to-one, having a conversation, and that's the big picture. From there, though, it's full program design, individual, not templated. So it's exactly what that client needs after going through a full assessment. Once they've gotten that program design, that's a lot of times where the basic lifestyle, the nutritional components, all those need to come in, and it's the coach's job to have those conversations to get those pieces in line. Why it works, though, is because on $1 per hour or a number of hours per client, it's less time per client per hour than either personal training the margin is higher per client, obviously, than a group facility. So it's a different model than Barry's Boot Camp. Peloton is obviously a technology-based model, so it's different. What this is this provides people that coaching mechanism at an affordable price, so it's not $1,200 a month like personal training, but you still get to do it in a group or team environment. So when people come into our gym, they go, well, are they doing group? And it's like, no, they're all on their individual program, but in this environment, people are having conversations with one another all the time. The music gets loud just like it does in any other gym. But it's a beautiful thing because they're all doing exactly what they need to go back to Michael's point of getting to their end goal. Not my end goal, not the gym's end goal, it's their end goal. And from a business standpoint, it's been great for almost all of our gyms to think about actually having the creativity of coaching again. Instead of being kind of the slave to the whiteboard, right? It's now I get to actually think through why my clients could actually do this 2 years down the road, or how they can go to this place where, it's just a great relationship building idea, and the margins are also good.
Making money is a good thing.
Yep.
Don't martyr. We've talked about this before. Don't martyr yourself in this industry just for the sake of I work 37 hours, yet you're charging $9 an hour.
But what I will say, and it's whether you're an Opex'S gym or whether you're a different type of gym in a higher end, you had better prove that you actually are good. So for our system, every coach has to finish our CCP program before they even get to step foot into an Opex'S gym, because we don't want to put our name on anybody's door unless we know that they can actually coach.
Yeah.
So all of these gyms have to finish a final project that's graded by James and Michael and our instructors. This is not just a little quiz, right? This is working with clients and showing an actual report of how you're working with your clients. That's just to get your foot in the door. Then you've got to go through 6 months of education with me and James on weekly phone calls with you all the time.
Wow.
There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
So we might have 10 gyms in a certain group going through our licensing cohort. You cannot fool us with what you're doing. Now, obviously, we want every gym to grow, but every gym is also unique. So what do? We've got to give these guys ideas on specifics that they need to implement, because some people transition from group to individual, and they might have 60 clients to start. Other people are starting from 0. So we've got to have a great framework with which to grow all of these facilities, or else they won't succeed. And even right now, one of the things that I'm doing, I'm having one-to-one phone calls with all of our long-standing gyms just to make sure we're implementing everything that we need to implement, because we're only 14 or 15 months into this program. So we're just infants in this whole thing.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we practice what we preach and are helping our gyms grow as fast as possible.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. And I mean, I wish I got out of training, because I was training 15 hours a day, starting out of a 24-hour fitness and then going privateer. And I'm like, this is great when I'm 27. What am I going to do when I'm 40?
Yeah.
I need to straight up get out of this industry. I love it, but it's not for me. But I wish I had something like that, because it might have led me down a different path. Not that I don't love being able to sit down here with all of you in this beautiful facility. My career worked out okay, but damn, what a great opportunity. And hopefully you guys research them and take advantage of the opportunity for you to come in and join that. So let's tell us more about it from a coaching.
Yeah. To put it simply, we meet clients where they're at and we nudge them forward. I mean, that's probably the easiest way to actually understand it. But if I have to do an elevator pitch to somebody at Whole Foods, that even to them, they're like, huh? So for those who understand CrossFit, it's like, all right, you're going to the CrossFit gym or just group fitness in general. You're hopping on the bus, you're going to San Diego, you're going to the beach. But I want to go snowboarding in Colorado. Not too bad, you're going to the beach. I don't care what your goals are. You're not going to go where you want to go.
Yeah.
We look at it from like, hey, I'm going to be your Cessna pilot and I'm going to take you right there. And so you have to go through, for us, it's 3 hours of assessments. So it's 3 individual hours, not 3 hours in a row. So
Just frying people. Like, okay, fine, I'll buy it. Just leave me alone.
Row until you can't row anymore.
yeah,
For 3 hours. Fuck.
yeah. No, that's an
That sounds awful.
nope. Longest one we give is an hour-long row.
Oh, good.
That's still pretty bad.
Oh, I
not-
rode crew in college despite my height, and we do that, and like it's shitty.
Yep. Yeah. So a client will come in and they'll work with us for an hour. And the first step is, hey, we're having a conversation. We're building a relationship because I really want to know what you are looking to get. And then we do some level of fitness testing, but it depends on where they're at. If you come to me and you just had a knee replacement, you're not doing an assault bike test. I'm going to watch you try and just squat to a chair.
Yeah.
Versus, like, I've worked with professional baseball players. You're not just squatting to a chair. I want to watch you do what you do. Bring in some video of you pitching so I can see kind of where your weak link is. Let's do some neurodynamics assessments, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all about kind of meeting your clients where you're at its root thing. Then the second assessment is another hour, but it's just digging deeper into things. So teaching clients, not just training them and being accountable for them, but teaching them. Like I taught all of my athletes, this is how you log your food. This is how you track your food. This is how you actually eat for your goals. Sometimes it's macros. Sometimes it's just chew your vegetables more. Sometimes it's
Have a vegetable.
have a vegetable. No, honestly, yeah. I just looked at a client's food log yesterday and I was like, you had no vegetables the entire week. And we look at that like, what? But he was like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like, why? Well, can't I just do a green supplement? To them, to a lot of people, that's normal. I had a client years back who ate Wendy's twice a day. And in my mind, I was like, why would you do that? So I asked him a quick little question. I was like, what's up with this? And he was like, well, they use fresh meat. And in his mind, he
doing
actually
the right
thought,
thing.
yeah, exactly. He was like, I'm being healthy. They use fresh meat, never frozen. You can't just throw macros at someone like
Yeah.
that. So you can't do templated things with people because it's not going to be sustainable. So what we really do is we try to just, we want to work with our clients for a long time. I had a nice consult yesterday with a client I've been programming and coaching for 5 years. And he used to work with me in person. Now he's on the East Coast and he's still my client. And we still work together and we talk every 2 weeks. So we don't talk about stuff like macros or hey, this is how you squat. It's more like, yo, what's going on with life, man? Like, how's business? What's going on? Are you dating anyone? Are you now engaged, et cetera, et cetera? That's where we kind of see people come in from our advertising or marketing into advertising, into a consultation, into program and fitness, into nourishment, and then they're accountable. And it's almost as if I'm trying to make them no longer need me.
Yeah.
But they still need me because there's always a relationship there. So the relationship is what they crave because people are tribal. Unless you're an outlier and you're an introvert, but most people are tribal. They want to belong. They want to have a relationship. That's what we do best. And programming, I would rather have somebody that's a newer Opex'S or a newer CCP coach write a very basic program that's followed 100% than some fancy schmancy, we're going to use Kaisers and all this fancy, pneumatic equipment, but we're not going to do it to the best of our ability. But it's a fancy program.
Yeah.
So the relationship is really what we begin building the second you step in. And we're very clear with that too. Like my clients, they know that they have to link up with me. They know they have to sit down with me. They know that's the highest value. I mean, front squat, back squat, those things can be important, but if you're not talking or communicating and having a relationship, it's going nowhere. It's not sustainable.
We've got to out relationship the broader market. So it's a very, very sexy industry, but that really confuses people.
Yeah.
Because when they get into a program, they expect sexy all the time. So we're trying to sell the long game to people, which once they have their eyes open, by the way, whether it's a coach or a client, everything changes for them. Everything changes.
And I think that community aspect is so important because I think even if you are introverted, you were mentioning if you're an outlier or you're introverted, even hermits need to see some type of community happening, or it's a little dismal. My partner and I, we started a co-working space because being entrepreneurs and so many people living alone, it was causing this weird sense of like isolation, even amongst ourselves. You know, we own businesses, and working at a coffee shop or at home, there's this feeling like you're just so alone, you know? And even though you see other people working there, it's like the personal training thing, you know. I know that person across the gym from me in the Globo gym has similar goals as me, but that's a totally different person. When you have these small group classes, we were just talking earlier about like, what do you think the future of fitness is? It's small communities. It's like finding those through lines with people where like even though our programs are different, we have this parallel play that's going on. You're working on you, I'm working on me, but we're working on us together.
Well, and if there isn't a relationship, it will be technology. You know, it's just what's coming. You know, so look at Peloton, absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. A screen and a bike, and it's an absolute phenomenon. But it makes complete sense. You know, and what are they selling to? They're selling to people not having enough time, not wanting to actually get to the gym, not wanting to be, you know, gawked at by other people in the gym. It's a beautiful model. I mean, it makes total sense. I think a lot of things will go towards that place, unless you can actually develop results in a relationship with people, and then you can be in business for a really long time.
Yeah.
What I think as well, in terms of what we're doing here, you know, you say you're working on me and I'm working on me, and people see that as different goals, but I actually see it all as the same. Because if you line up through a good relationship and through authentic coaching and transparency, I have a client that's 67, could barely bend her knees when she got here. Now she can actually do a full deadlift with a trap bar and full knee flexion. Compared to a CrossFit Games athlete like Tennille Reed, they actually both had the exact same ultimate goal, living to their highest values through fitness. So Barb's not trying to go to the CrossFit Games. She's just trying to hang out with their grandkids. Whereas Tennille's trying to go to the games again for the third time. So both of them have that purpose. And so it's life or living to your purpose through fitness. That's how I would look at it from a 30-person, you know, group in this gym at once. But every single person has a purpose, and what we try to do is help people find that purpose so they can live it to the end of their days.
I think that's like really great, like helping people live to their purpose. I think that's so huge because we get so caught up. Some people, you know, you really a lot of pride in like your programming and how many books you've read and how many certs you've gone to and the shit that's decorated on your walls and all of that is great. But like, how do you deliver that? And I go and. You know, I came from the 24-hour fitness world. I wasn't training pro athletes by any means. And I go, some people you forget that, you know, she might be a CEO of X company, right? Not to name names. And God, maybe she's 15 minutes late and you're super annoyed because she's your 10th client of the day. And you're ready to just ream on her for being late. But you don't know that her husband just left her and that she still came in to work out because you're the best fucking part of her day. So even if she got a partial workout in, but she came because of that connection with you, the workout sometimes was binary to the fact that she still made it in and she still values that connection with you that much to still put that effort in, even though the rest of her life is going crazy. But we take so much pride in that, like, oh, well, Grandma Betty did dynamic effort box squats, prowler pushes, kettlebell snatches. And I'm like, that's great. Those are all great things for her to do. Grandma Betty's my go-to, right? Because it paints a picture, right? Grandma, you know, and maybe Grandma Betty's crushing them dynamic effort box squats, right? But then even then, if you give that to them day one, what are you gonna like? Even if she has the physical capacity to do so, let's just say she's a freak of nature. It's Rich Froning's grandma, right? But what are you gonna do with her in 6 months? Because you just gave her all the sexy you probably knew right there, and you just blew your wad, and now you got nothing. Because she doesn't want to go back to kettlebell swings.
It's called Peloton.
Yeah. So let's go through, how do people, is CCP something that you're able to come to no matter where you're at in your journey? Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've had strength coaches at extremely high levels come through CCP. Actually, I had one that was from Canada who works with Canada Special Forces. She was here in August. We've also had people who are like, yeah, I just started coaching last month. So from every angle, you know, we can have any coach come in because we teach principles. Principles will always be there. Like, we didn't invent them. They've been around since gladiator days. Like, people need to be aerobic to be healthy. So we teach how to make things aerobic. We teach coaches how to understand what aerobic is. So any coach can do that. Like, we're here to teach coaches how to understand what they don't fully understand at any level. So we've had any type of coach can come through. And they'll learn something. They'll gain something.
Yep.
And then what's the journey what's the journey you guys hope people go on with you? Like from, I just found out about Opex'S through Fitness Break Room podcast, and how do you want them to progress through your system because they really loved the information today?
We actually do a lot of content. So we've got a content team now. So we've got YouTube channels, social media pages, obviously, blogs are going up. So we do a lot of that now. But where most people ultimately start is one of two places. Either they do a course like we have a flywheel bike, an assault bike course. We've got a principles of program design course as entry points.
Okay.
Or they actually start as remote clients. So we've got a lot of people who actually hire Michael as a coach remotely. It's a great place to start. And then from there, so many people recognize that they want to take it to the next level as a coach, and that's where they really go into CCP. And it's a really good ascent for them once they get in, because I want to say program design alone is 25 hours of content or something like that. So there's so much good stuff that people can dig into, and then once they start to practice it, that's where it really starts to sink in, and that's what this immersion course is. And then as they're going through CCP, we've got licensing for those folks who know they want to make this a business for the long run. And then we've also got a level 2 CCP, which is taught by some really high-end folks. You teach part of it as well, but naturopath doctors, James, et cetera. So there is a very long-term progression for coaches through Opex'S.
Very cool. Very cool. As we start to wrap up the show, something we like to ask is, what's a piece of advice that you want to give brand new trainers getting into the industry that they can take away and implement today to be more successful?
Mine's simple. If you don't think that you're in a competitive business, you won't be a coach for very long. So you have to play that game, and I don't mean underhandedly, but you have to know that everybody wants the clients that you want. And so you have to be better, you have to be more educated, you have to deliver a better relationship, you've got to be marketing better and more often than somebody around you, even if you're a coach and not even in a large business of coaching.
Where to begin?
Remember, digestible for the brand new person.
No, I think that was all pretty digestible.
No,
He's like,
I'm like talking to Michael as he's like pondering thought, and I'm like,
Superior man.
all right, mister, these guys aren't ready for scholarly articles.
Yeah, no,
Cite something now.
I would, I would just say that remember that dogma is the death of mastery, and principles will always transcend paradigms. So seek what's common, because success leaves clues. As an example for everyone watching and listening to understand, DNS, PRI, FMS, SFMA, Craig Liebenson, Stu McGill, the one thing everyone seems to be doing most is worrying about proximal before, or inner units basically, before worrying about outer units, which really at the end of the day is breathing. Yanda, Dr. or Professor Levitt, people that were doing this and died before I was even born were doing that. There are no new wheels. It's just new spinners. And if you can seek out what's commonly done in the successful systems, you'll be all right.
Awesome. So where can people find you guys? Not only Opex'S, but where can they find you guys?
Yeah, so it's just opexfit.com. That's our main website. That'll get you anywhere you need to go. We've got Opex'S Fitness and Opex'S Athlete Facebook and Instagram pages. So check us out there. We're always on them. We've got a team who's always answering questions. So we'd love to hear from people.
Awesome.
And yeah, I have Instagram and Facebook. My Instagram is just at coach_Michael_Bann. Or you can just look up my hashtag. A client of mine made it up. It's kind of comical. I was upset that I didn't think of it, but it's hashtag bandwagon, BANN.
I saw that. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's very clever.
I was like, why didn't I think of that? But yeah, Instagram, I put a lot of free stuff out there, and I always respond to messages and DMs and comments and questions.
He does.
So slide into his DMs.
Yeah.
I don't understand that phrase. I've heard it like 16 times, and
We can go do a practical later.
I just don't. Yeah.
Go back to that summit you guys had earlier.
Yeah, well, we were dorm mates.
Oh man.
You guys know me.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
No, I think that's it for me. You guys, thank you so much for watching our show. It's been a pleasure to have you guys on.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
This was
Appreciate
great.
it.
If you love the content, go to their website, check out what they're doing. In the marketing sense, I'm really impressed with the branding and the content that you put out there. I loved meeting your team. I just felt like you guys are all really aligned, and even if it's happening consciously or subconsciously, I think that you guys are doing something really important, and I'm really happy to be able to be here and explore everything that you guys are doing. So I feel like if you guys go to their website and just kind of explore what they're doing online, you'll get a good sense of what they do in person. But if you get the chance, definitely go see them in person. I personally, one of my favorite coaches and friends, Scott Pfeiffer, who I'm going to their wedding next week. Do you know who that is? Okay, yeah. He had so many amazing things to say about Opex's. This was before I knew anything about you guys. And for me, I respect the things that he says so much as an athlete. I was brand new when he was coaching me, and I was like, wow, that company seems like something that I would love to like just look into at some point, and like, hello, here I am. Yeah. Cool. It's cool that happened. Anywho, so go to our website, fitnessbreakroom.com, and you can check out the show notes for this and all the things that we referenced. And I think that's about it for us.
Yeah, tons of scholarly article citations for this show.
I provided none of them.
yeah, it's okay. you gave a lot of practical knowledge.
Good.
You bring something to the table too.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Thanks guys for joining us. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you next time on the Fitness Break Room.
See you guys.
See you.
Thanks again for listening to the Fitness Break Room podcast, everybody. You can follow us on Instagram at Fitness Break Room. And if you're looking to enter our monthly fitness swag giveaway, you can visit our website, fitnessbreakroom.com, and all that info's on the homepage. Hundreds of dollars for listening to the Fitness Break Room podcast. I wouldn't miss that. You can follow us, and then you can even subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. And if you're looking to enter our monthly fitness swag giveaway, you can visit our website. Okay, guys, have a beautiful week. Stay strong, and always look out for the dollar guy. Awesome stuff. So, and then